Hello everyone. Today I will be giving a recap of the movie John Wick Chapter 4. The movie starts with John Wick punching a block of wood until his hands bleed. While a man named Bowery King walking down an alley and meets up with John and asks him if he's ready. John says yeah. Next scene opens up in the desert with John chasing 3 men on horses. John manages to kill one of the horsemen, while a man in dark clothing is watching from a cliff. Then he kills another. And then the final one. Then John gets off his horse and walks up to the man in the dark clothing, kneeling to him asking him for his freedom. But the man in the dark clothing tells John the only way he can get his freedom is through death. John says he knows. Then John shoots the man and leaves. Next scene opens up at a hotel where a man called the Harbinger wearing a dark hat and one of his fingers missing hands a letter to the desk accountant. He asked the desk accountant named Sharon to see the hotel manager. Sharon calls the hotel manager and tells him a Harbinger is here to see him. The Harbinger meets up with the hotel manager named Winston and tells the hotel manager by order of the Marquis the hotel has been condemned and has 1 hour to shut the hotel down. Winston tells Sharon to evacuate the hotel. Next Winston and Sharon go meet a man staring out a window, the villain of the story named Marquis. Marquis then tells a quote that his father always said to him for Winston and Sharon to hear. Then when the hourglass runs out, an explosion is heard outside the building. It was the hotel being destroyed. Then Marquis tells Winston he is no longer New York. Winston clenches his fist showing his anger, and Marquis continues to insult Winston and tells him he is nothing, an excommunicado, and no longer needs the services of a concierge, and pulls a gun out on him. But instead shoots Sharon, killing him. Winston then says it should have been him that died and not Sharon. Then Marquis spares Winston and lets him live and leaves the room. Next scene shows a blind man named Kane listening to a violinist, his daughter. Then Kane meets up with Marquis. Marquis says he wants to hire Kane for a job, but Kane says he's retired. But Marquis then threatens Kane's daughter if Kane refuses. Then Kane receives a card of the target's name, revealing the name John Wick. Kane says that John was a friend of his a long time ago. Kane then kneels saying he will take the job only to save his daughter's life. Next scene opens up at a club with a man wearing glasses named Shimazu, while his daughter, Akira, is talking to a customer. Then the customer that Akira was talking to pulls out a book revealing pictures of John. Then Akira meets up with her father talking about the club's business, and John Wick, saying that they shouldn't help him, and they're putting their lives at risk. Then Shimazu goes out to the roof, where John is standing. They begin to talk about how they left a normal life a long time ago. And John says he's going to kill them all, but Shimazu says he won't be able to. Then Akira shows up in a panic saying the high table, the assassins hunting John, are at the club. Then Shimazu meets with the assassins and tries to get them to leave, saying that John isn't there. But the assassins don't believe him. Then the lights turn off, and a fight breaks out, both sides trying to take the upper hand. Then the scene cuts back to John and Akira, then they join the fight as well. John and Akira both fight their way back to the club. One by one they make quick work of all the enemies. After the enemies on the roof are defeated, they head back inside. Then the scene cuts back to Shimazu and his crew fighting more gunmen. Then the blind man Kane who has been hiding in the shadows shows up and starts to take out Shizuma's men. Then the scene cuts back to John and Akira killing their way through numbers of gunmen, showing off their skills. They then meet up with Shimazu. Then Shimazu tells John to leave, but John says he will stay and fight. But Shimazu says he would be insulting his gift if John stays. So John decides to leave. But he is met with more gunmen. John eventually makes it through them, but not unscathed, As he tries to get out, Cain then shows up. The two say they're sorry that they have to fight each other. The two begin to fight each other. They both go back and forth evenly matched. Then they both get a few more shots off at each other. John then tries to take advantage of Cain's blindness by letting Cain think he's dead, when Cain asks John if he's alive. But John makes a noise alerting Cain. The two start to fight again. Eventually Cain manages to get the upper hand on John. But their fight gets interrupted by another assassin, called the Tracker, the customer that Akira was talking to. John manages to get away from Cain, then John meets with the Tracker. The two have a standoff. But the Tracker then shoots a gunman trying to kill John, only because the Tracker wants the bounty on John's head for himself. John then leaves. The next scene shows Akira and her father who were injured trying to get away, but is stopped by Cain. Cain then makes them an offer. Run away and leave or die. But Shimazu tries to fight Cain in an one-on-one fight, but is quickly defeated and killed. Akira tries to help Shimazu, but it is too late and dies in her arms. Akira looks at Cain in anger and tries to reach for the sword, but Cain stops her, and tells her to live instead. Akira then limps away. And Cain says he will be waiting for her, which makes Akira angry. Akira then meets John at a train blaming him for Shimazu's death. Next scene shows the Tracker meeting Marquis asking Marquis for money to kill John Wick. But Marquis then asks the Tracker how he found John Wick. The Tracker will tell him only if he is paid. But this angers Marquis and he stabs the Tracker in his hand. Marquis says to the Tracker he will consider the Tracker's help if he pulls his hand out of the knife to test his determination. The Tracker pulls his hand out the knife. Then John meets up with Winston. John then gives Winston a pin, asking him who is this. Winston tells John it is Marquis. And if Marquis kills John he will be promoted. John says he is going to kill him, but Winston says it will be pointless, and the table will just replace Marquis. Winston tells John to challenge Marquis to single combat to earn his freedom. John then goes to a church, with the Tracker following him. John then tries to speak to the priest, but the priest shoots John and gets grabbed by two men. Then the scene shows the Tracker on the phone with Marquis, giving John's location. Marquis then orders the Tracker to kill John Wick. Then the next scene shows John in a noose, surrounded by a group of people, questioning him. John says he wants their help to challenge Marquis. The woman responds saying she will only help John if he kills the man who murdered her father. John agrees to the deal. Then John goes to meet the man he has to kill. The poker dealer is his target. Then Cain shows up along with the Tracker, getting into an argument with the poker dealer, Cain saying that John Wick is his kill. So they try to settle the dispute by a poker game. The poker dealer then wins the poker game. John then cuts the poker dealer's throat with a poker card and a fight breaks out. John, Cain, and the Tracker kills the poker dealer's men. Then the poker dealer tries to make an escape. John soon chases after him, and goes through the poker dealer's men, killing them, one by one. John then catches up to the poker dealer, and gets into a fight with him, but the poker dealer is a skilled fighter and catches John off guard, and throws John off a railing. John then gets back up only to be surrounded by more of the poker dealer's men. John manages to kill them. Then the poker dealer joins the fight to finish off John, but John manages to get the upper hand on the poker dealer by attacking his neck wound. Then John starts to beat down the poker dealer until he is unconscious. Before he can kill the poker dealer, more of his men shows up. Then the poker dealer regains consciousness and attempts another escape. But John catches up to the poker dealer again by throwing a knife at his leg. Then John pushes the poker dealer over the railing, killing him. Then John punches him in the face, taking his gold tooth to confirm his death. Then John goes back to the church and gives the gold tooth to the woman. Then the woman and her henchman pour molten metal into a metal cup. Then John and the woman brand their arms to solidify their deal. Then Winston goes to meet Marquis to tell him that John Wick wants to challenge Marquis in single combat. Marquis accepts the deal. Then John meets Marquis in person to discuss the challenge. The rules are that John has to meet a certain location before sunrise just to start the challenge. Then he has to beat Kane, who will be fighting for Marquis in his spot. They will fight in a 30 paces duel, like back then in the 17th century. But before that, Marquis is allowed to try to kill John. John then leaves to the starting point of the challenge. Then John gets attacked by groups of assassins. John then meets with the tracker. They both start to fight. John eventually gets the upper hand. But instead of killing the tracker, John spares him, and saves his dog. John then makes it to the stairs of the location he needs to be, killing his way to the top going through multiple enemies. But when he reaches the top, he gets pushed all the way back down. Then Kane shows up and decides to help him. They both fight their way back to the top. John then gets cornered by an assassin, but gets saved by the tracker. Then Kane and John get to the top of the stairs to start their duel. Everyone there has a toast to start the fight. Kane and John then walk 30 paces away from each other. Then they both fire at each other, only hitting each other in the arm. Then they walk 10 paces towards each other. Then they fire again. Kane gets hit in the gut while John got hit in the shoulder. Then they walk another 10 paces towards each other. They both try to shoot each other, but Kane manages to get John in the gut. Then Marquis walks up to Kane for his gun. But Kane first asks if his daughter is safe. Marquis says yes. Then Marquis walks up to John to finish the job. But not realizing that John did not shoot his gun on the third attempt, the challenge was still active. Since Marquis stepped in for Kane, the rules were not violated. John then shoots Marquis in the head, winning the challenge. Then the Harbinger says John is now free, and Kane's daughter is safe. Kane then goes to say goodbye to John, then leaves. Then John sits on the steps whispering his wife's name, and remembering a flashback. Then John falls over, and dies. Then the next scene shows Winston and the Bowery King standing over John's, and his wife's grave. Then when Winston is alone at the grave he says goodbye, and walks away. Then the credits roll.